Every Minecraft world starts with trees. One punch, and you're on your way to start an amazing world. Before long, your house is built. But when it's done, you realize something is missing, so you plant some tree saplings next to it. Only to realize Minecraft trees, they don't look that great. So you decide to build some custom trees. But they end up looking more like cartoon spheres on top of a trunk than a tree. So today I'll be showing you how to build amazing custom oak trees in 3 easy steps. Also teaching you my favorite tips and tricks along the way. In this video I will show you how to build these trees, but it will not be a block for block tutorial. If you want these exact trees for yourself, you can download them linked in the description. Now I'm going to show you some of the blocks that we're going to be using for this build. I like to use birch, oak, and azalea leaves, as well as some moss with some grass on the top for details. Mainly for the trunk, I like to use stripped spruce and oak logs, with a little bit of mangrove wood as well, just to make it a little bit darker in areas. Now for the details, I like to use spruce stairs, slabs, and trapdoors, as well as a few spruce fences and the mud brick wall. In stage 1 of this build, we're doing the trunk, and you want to start out with stacking some oak blocks as high as you would like to make the tree. When I'm building the trunk, I also like to try to offset it a little bit in places as I go up, so it doesn't look too straight and perfect. The next thing I like to do is start placing some full blocks at the bottom for some roots. I don't like to go too chunky, but I do like to add a little bit. Once you got that done, you can come in here with stairs and slabs and trapdoors. Then you get a little bit of a tapering root. I also like to add some walls in here to make it taper up a little bit. Then we can put another slab and trapdoor there. I might put another slab on top of there. It's easy to get carried away and make the roots too big, but I also like to try to keep them slim so that the bottom doesn't get too chunky. Then a lot of times I'll put a little bit of the mangrove wood in here just to make it a little bit darker at the bottom where there might be more moisture. When I first started building custom trees, my first thought was let me use fences as the branches, but today I'm going to show you why they are not the best block to use for branches. Now I'm going to show you what it would look like if I used fences on this trunk. We're just going to come out here and build a normal branch. Now some of the main issues that I have with fences is that they are completely full blocks and there's no half slab variant, so it's hard to get really natural looking curves. As well as in general, the holes and everything else just don't look that great in my opinion. The other thing I don't like about using fences for branches is trying to do diagonal ones. They don't look that great. So this is how I like to start making trees. We're just gonna come up here and do a couple slabs, and then I'm going to do a full block. I also like using trapdoors. Sometimes you have to do placeholder blocks as well. Here you get the idea of how I like to make curving branches. Sometimes you have to branch off a little bit so that you can place another slab, and then we're going to do that there. And then at the end, I like to use trapdoors. And the great thing about trapdoors is you can go down a little bit at the end, and it just gives it a little bit more curve. Then the other thing that I like to do is put vertical trapdoors like this for little branches sticking off the bottom. And you can really quickly see how branches like this look a lot better than branches like this. Now sometimes you can put a fence in like that for one little twig, but anytime you do 2 or 3, it tends to get really straight and looking really unorganic. Something that I notice when I build trees is if I just look at the tree from one angle, I end up with very flat looking trees when the branches are done. So one of my tips is to constantly be moving around your build as you do all of the branches. Another tip I have is to try to think about your tree like a circle from the top, and try to make it so that branches connect to the circle on all of the different sides so that you actually end up with a nice round looking tree. It doesn't have to be perfect because trees aren't perfect, but you also don't want it to look flat. Because curves and branches are definitely easier to build flat, one of my tips when learning how to do the curves is to build it very straight, but then come along and just bring each one of these blocks out like this, and then go back in and break it up to the point where you want it to start curving. And then you can bring it out another block and then break it a little bit more back where you want it to start curving a little bit more. And you just work on it and slowly get it to actually come out and be more of a branch that's at a diagonal instead of a branch that is going completely straight. Now you can see this branch still looks really nice, but it is no longer straight, and it actually looks good from this direction as well. Another reason why I love trapdoors so much for little branches is because you can do two like that, and it is not perfectly straight. It actually looks like it's a nice curve. But you can add little things like that to make it feel like a little bit of a stick is coming off. You can also put them underneath like that, and they're just really versatile, underused blocks in my opinion when it comes to making tree branches. Now before we actually finish this tree, I am going to come in here and texture this up a little bit more using some stripped spruce logs, as well as using some mud brick walls in some of these areas to just smooth things out a little bit. And then on the top, you can add some more mud brick walls like that. That looks really good, and now we're ready to put some branches on and finish up this tree. When building these branches and trees, I would definitely recommend practicing your technique and improving your skill in a creative world before doing this in survival. But when you get the understanding of how to do it, it becomes easy to do it wherever you might be building a tree. I like to start out by building some main large branches. Then the higher you get, make them slightly shorter so you can round off the top. Make sure to do diagonal branches as well, just to keep the tree from looking too flat when looking at it from the side. And constantly be going around the tree, looking at it from every angle just to make sure it looks good. Once the main branches are in, you can come in with smaller branches here and there until you get all the little details in. And that is step 1 finished with all the branches in place. If you're someone that struggles with trying to get ideas for branch shapes, I would recommend going online and checking out some trees without leaves on them. We have now reached step 2, where we're going to be placing some oak leaves all over the tree. But we're going to use some strategy to try and get the best outcome. I like to start by just adding some leaves on the end of each branch. Not too thick, but just a little bit here and there. I tend to break a lot of leaves, so if you're doing this in survival, get a hoe and also an allay, and the allay will pick up the leaves on the ground and bring them back up to you, which is actually really nice. So that's about enough for that one, and then we're just gonna go around and do the same thing on the end of each branch, just to get it started. If you haven't watched any of my other tutorials by now, I have a strategy that I use called air gaps. That is where I'll place a bunch of blocks like this, place another one, and then break that one for a little bit of an air gap in between. I find that having air gaps in your tree makes it feel more fluffy and feel more realistic at the end of the day. If you put them too close and bunch them up too much, you end up with a tree that is just way too dense and doesn't feel very airy or fluffy like a normal tree would. The great thing about building trees that actually have nice branches is you can focus on actually making the leaves look great next to the branches instead of trying to cover up all the ugly branches with leaves and ending up with a really dense tree that doesn't actually look very nice. I am going to leave a couple of these smaller branches at the bottom uncovered just to give it a little bit of character at the bottom. The reason why I don't actually try to finish each branch one at a time and just put a few leaves on the end of each branch and then move on to the next one is that way I don't actually get caught up too much with a certain shape, and you can kind of let the shaping happen naturally by following the shape of the actual branches that you did earlier. That's why actually shaping branches in the first step is the most important step of making a nice tree. You can see already it's looking really nice by just putting some leaves on the end of some of these branches. And then at the top, you treat it the same way, except you pick the top of your tree and then just kind of flow out from there, trying to slowly connect it to the other branches and sort of make it fit. And now we're at this point where we've added some leaves on the end of each one of our branches. And I can say it's starting to really look nice. But the next goal is to try to shape it out and try to add a little bit more to each one of these. You also want to go back a little bit further on the branch and also just try to expand it in all directions. Try to make it more fluffy, you know, add your air gaps as per usual. And just keep shaping, slowly adding here and there, and you're gonna end up with a really nice looking tree. Also, at this point, you have to start thinking about the branches that are right next to it. You can start joining it in areas so that it's not so much of an individual branch, but it starts feeling like a cohesive tree. So that is the next step here as your branches get bigger and bigger and the leaves get fuller. And just like when we were doing the trunk, just make sure to keep flying around and making sure that the shape looks good from all directions, adding leaves here a little, there a little, until you're happy with what you see on all of the branches. And stage 2 is now pretty much done. The tree looks pretty good. I did quite a bit of shaping and texturing, and that just takes time and practice at the end of the day. Just adding little bit leaves here and there. I also like adding these little things coming out because I feel that trees should look pretty natural and not too perfect. Anytime you make it too shaped and too perfect, it starts looking unnatural. So have a lot of things looking out of place and organic. Now the third step we're going to do is not 100% necessary, but I really like to do it to get that extra detail in. First of all, we're going to do this on one of the branches and then you can do it on the rest. So I start by putting a couple birch leaves underneath, just replacing them with the oak leaves. I find that the birch just adds a little bit of shadow and a little bit of the darker effect along the bottom, which I think looks really nice for the leaves, as well as it's a different texture. Then I take the azalea leaves and put them on the top. The reason why I put them on the top is because they're a little bit lighter. The sun tends to hit the top of the trees anyway, and it just gives it a light effect and a little bit of a gradient. So that looks really nice. Then I like to take some moss and place it in the cracks and just put some grass in there. You can do the too tall grass or you can just do the regular grass, depending on what you're going for. And then especially up here on the top, when you put the moss in here, you can see the grass sticking up and it just makes the build a little bit better and makes it a little bit fluffier, kind of like bushy leaves. I don't currently like using bushy leaves. I like trying to use the regular vanilla Minecraft look with the square leaves. But this gives it a little bit of that bushy effect that you might get if you were using bushy leaves. If you are using bushy leaves, you probably don't need this. But you can just do that all over the build and you kind of see what you're getting, just a little bit of that overgrowth. And now we're going to do that to all the rest of the leaves, and then the tree is completed. And now the tree is finished. The detailing part really doesn't take that long. You're just replacing a couple leaves and adding some moss and grass. But it really does make the tree stick out and look much, much better in my opinion. So yeah, that is how you build the best oak tree. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.